the pleasures of this meeting is the contrast between different approaches. This is going to be a very different talk by John Bibby, who will be zigzagging around Karl Pearson's Yorkshire roots. There's an interesting image conjured up there. So, okay, why don't you get your slides?
Right. Well, I've called it Zigzags and Rambles, and because of the pressure of time, and I'm relying on Graham to wave frantically when I've got 5 minutes or so left, because rambles, I've said, but actually parts of it are going to be a gallop, and parts of it will probably be a jump, because I've got far more slides than I can get through in order to get to the finishing line before Graham brings the curtain down. I've called it, well, I have said biography, but it's more a familiography. I don't know whether that's a new word, but we had essences of familiography earlier on this morning in the discussion of Paul Halmos. And certainly with mine, there is, I think, there are some big questions underlying it. Fundamentally, so what? Even if we do learn all about a great mathematician's family, what does this tell us? And certainly for many of the people that I've got information about, I think the answer is absolutely nothing. So you may not be interested in it. I've actually got the vastly extended family. I have got some information of over 5,000 people who are related, allegedly related, one way or another, to Karl Pearson. Now, partly this is the data diarrhea, some people call it, because I've found people online who have got their family history, and there's an overlap with Karl Pearson, so therefore they are related. So there's much. I'm not going to speak about all 5,000 of them. You will be quite relieved to know. But there is this second question that I think is quite important, or may be important, that there are many people all around the world, amateurs and idiots, and I count myself under both of those. I'm very much in favour of idiots' questions, who are working hard on history. Can we actually exploit this energy and dynamism and resource in more academic work? I think there's an important question there. And there are local historians and there are family historians that maybe could be drawn upon. I've put here, Ted Porter is the definitive modern biography of Karl Pearson. For anything different or better, you have to go back at least 80 years. He's quite good on early Karl Pearson, not so good on later Pearson, very fallible on the family. I've had correspondence with him, and there's quite a few errors, some of which I'll allude to. And Eileen Magnello is another person who's written well and profusely on Karl Pearson, and she's bringing out a book with an ever-receding publication date. So I've put circa 2017, and some of my material is going to be in there. But who is this guy, Karl Pearson? Have any of you heard of Karl Pearson? Oops, do I do page down? No? Sorry, what do I do to go to the next page? Down arrow? No, it's not working. Right. There, right, okay. Do we know anything about Karl Pearson? So who's heard of Karl Pearson? Right, can you give me a few keywords about Karl Pearson?
Name and Pearson, then.
Name and Pearson. Well, actually, no, that's his son.
Oh.
Right, okay. Statistics, good word.
Correlation
Calculator, okay. Some of you might have said chi-squared or correlation coefficient, or eugenics, you might have said. So I will tell you a little bit more about him. This is where I'm going to jump. C. Wright Mills, I think, is a very interesting discussion about how to structure things. Actually, I want to wave this book, which I'll wave again. History of Teaching Statistics was the first time I came across the Karl Pearson archives. As far as I'm aware, it's the only book that's ever appeared on the subject. I've got a garage full of these things, so I'm quite happy to give a few copies away to anybody who's interested. So here's several pictures about Karl Pearson. On the right, you'll see Francis Galton. Pearson was friends with an adulator, an admirer of Galton, and wrote the biography of. Florence Nightingale is another person I could bring into the triangle, but I won't say any more other than show her picture there. Rather interestingly, on this German stamp, she's called Florentine Nightingale, not Florence Nightingale. So I'm not sure whether that's a misprint or what. Methodological questions. I've already mentioned the second question, as it were, how does family fit into mathematical biography? But also, there's biography encapsulates autobiography. Certainly what I have to say encapsulates part of my own personal story, as it were. Pearson's biography of Galton certainly encapsulates a lot of information about Karl Pearson. It's a hagiography, and actually one of my conjectures is that Galton was to some extent a father figure, a father substitute for Pearson, partly because he was very disillusioned in many ways about his own father. There are big absences in what Pearson writes about his family. These holes could be significant. And the fourth question I've already alluded to, can amateurs and idiots contribute anything serious? Zigzags or turbulence, my background, non-expert, sort of interested in Karl Pearson, I'm a statistician, located in Yorkshire, and a rambler in both senses of that excellent term. Various sources here, including oral history. I've tracked down several relations and have spoken to them. Family historians, email discussion groups, what I call Googleology, and Serendipities being very important. Is there a methodology here? What I call a zigzagging historiography. Sounds extremely pretentious. But there are some questions there as to what extent can serious historians like yourselves learn from dilettantes who dabble around like myself. Who was Karl Pearson? Well, there's a word cloud. Yes, we've got eugenics, race, first. He was a theoretician. Many people, including MacTutor, I think used the phrase, he founded modern statistics. So undoubtedly an important person, but I'm not going to talk about his important person. I'm going to talk mainly about his family. So there's some pictures of Pearson. Down at the bottom left-hand corner is his family in the sense of his wife and his children, but I'm going to be talking mainly about his forebears and so on. He wrote the definitive 3-volume biography, hagiography of Francis Galton. There are some local links. He was an honorary LLD in St Andrews, but as far as I can tell, never came here. This is in 1913, it was the 500th anniversary of the university, and I think they had 50 honorary LLDs. So he was one of them. But the following year, the local rag in Dundee called him the most dangerous man in England. That was largely on the basis of some work he'd been doing against public health measures because he thought it conflicted with his eugenic ideas. So certainly some dangerous questions there. Two big questions. As a young man, he portrayed himself, and I think in some sense he generally was, a radical socialist feminist. Towards the end, he became Hitler worshipper as a bit over the top, but he did say some things about the interesting eugenic experiments that Herr Hitler is carrying out. And the second question, why does an arch-eugenicist of Karl Pearson's type, who spends decades studying pedigrees of so many families, show no interest in the details of his own pedigree? Now, the Pearson papers at UCL have recently been recatalogued. And actually that's thrown up some new things, so maybe he did show rather more interest in his own pedigree, but he never published them. Why? Now, ramble number one. I live in York. Round the corner is this street called Danby Terrace. It was built by a builder called Baker. Now, I know that there were bakers in Danby, North Yorkshire, who were related to Karl Pearson. So possibly these buildings were built by somebody who was related to him. Certainly a very famous baker from Danby who was related to Karl Pearson is John Gilbert Baker. He was the keeper at Kew, an Irish specialist. He was educated in York. He actually wrote this poem, it's a much longer poem, called Danby Beacon, and he says, "Heart as Baker, unthanked Pearson, now these names are heard no more." And all these family names are actually families that are related to Pearson. So John Gilbert Baker, FRS, Karl Pearson, FRS, they were related. They were both in London at the same time for about 50 years. Neither of them, as far as I could see, have shown any awareness of the other. That strikes me as rather peculiar. Perhaps it's not peculiar. People who know more about FRSs may be able to say it's not peculiar at all, but I find it rather amazing that these distant cousins never met each other, commented on the fact or anything like that. There's just a document showing how the Bakers and the Pearsons in Danby were linked. And here is quite an important letter in my development. This is a letter from Pearson to Galton from Danby, in which he relates to his family and he says, "We belong to those who have gone over the moor, south from here." And I was aware of this before I moved to Yorkshire, and it's always been a bit of a puzzle to me. And that phrase, "over the moor," made me think, well, where exactly was his family from? And so my summary of this first ramble is basically we've got here an input of local history, family history. I haven't referred to the Quakers in York Castle, but the unanswered question, where is over the moor? That's ramble number one. Ramble number two is what I've called tendentious terminology. Now, I'm going to gallop here. Many people writing about Pearson say he was a Yorkshire Quaker yeoman. Okay? And certainly the Quaker and yeoman come within the category of what I'm calling tendentious terminology. People tend to ascribe, certainly their own family, with reference to good traditions and great men and great ideas. And yeoman is better than saying as a peasant. I think maybe the Pearsons were peasants, but though that's not the terminology that's used. It's quite interesting that this terminology, particularly the reference to Quakers, postdates his meeting with Galton. And Galton, of course, was in a sense a true Quaker. He was also Pearson's hero and saint, and in many ways he was a father substitute for William Pearson. Coincidentally, perhaps, they were both born in the same year. So these are various quotes about the Pearsons being of yeoman stock. Some are from Karl Pearson himself. He never puts any detail, any meat on these generalisations. And here's his references about yeoman. Other people have looked at this with reference to other people, the word yeoman being nostalgic, a notion of imperialism as a super yeoman. And Karl Pearson, I think his political change from socialist to right-wing can be dated to the 1990s, which was the decade when he met Galton. It was also the decade of the Boer War, which was a great shock here culturally, and perhaps was a cause of the rise of some of the eugenics ideas, because we were sort of at risk of being defeated by these rather inferior people in southern Africa. So there's this tendentious terminology, aristocratisation. You tend to link your family with famous people and not the Yorks. Right, Quaker stock, I'm going to just jump over that. So a summary here is that particularly where you have hagiography, I think what one can be very seriously misled. And there's this well-known phrase, I think, biography encapsulates autobiography, and I've said hagiography encapsulates father worship. Is that what Pearson was doing? Question mark. Ramble number 3, over the moor. One day I was wandering south of Danby and I came across this monument to 4 people called Pearson. No sign at that stage that there was any connection. Interesting in a way, it's the largest monument in the graveyard. 3 people of one family died in 1 year. Elizabeth Pearson then survived 25 years, so she lost 2 children and 1 husband within the matter of a few months. What a tragedy, even if it was nothing to do with this story. Okay, thank you very much. So there's a sort of more summary of the same thing. When we go inside, however, we find some things which clearly link it with Karl Pearson. I find it very surprising that this monument has been there for 80 years and all the people who have studied Karl Pearson haven't seen it, and the local historians also haven't made the link with the maths historians. Okay, so in fact this monument was paid for by the father, so it could be memorialised there. So there's a summary, intense surprise that such a public announcement written in stone had not been found by Pearson historians. Little thing about the father, he maybe wasn't all that he seemed. Firstly, on this memorial that I just showed you, it says LLD in Edinburgh. He didn't get an LLD in Edinburgh. He seems to have attended in Edinburgh, and he seems to have been chucked out, I think. He left in a hurry at the beginning of 1848. He did quite well until then, but he didn't get his LLD as far as I can understand. That's just a letter 50 years later. I think somebody was about to bring this to the public notion. I've used the phrase wicked will because one of the descendants of actually Pearson's sister said there was somebody in the family called Wicked Will, and I wonder whether it was in fact Pearson's father. Another interesting thing here in terms of new technology, he had an illegitimate son. My first hint of this was a reference in an email discussion group which shouldn't be relied upon, but then later on, when I was going through the Pearson papers, I found a reference in the bank accounts of William Pearson QC to his payment of a bastardy fee on the birthday of this alleged son. So that seems fairly clear, the shooting gun. So William's not all that he seemed. Don't believe things even if it's written in stone. Could this have explained why Karl Pearson was perhaps a bit ashamed of his father? Possibly, I don't know. So I'm sorry, I'm just going to flick through quickly about the women. I've had difficulties with the women partly because they're called Smith, and Smiths are very difficult to find. I'm just going to flick through. She seems rather interesting. This is his brother, who died of syphilis at the age of 40. Plates. This is father, Karl, and the brother on the left on plates. I haven't seen people commemorated on plates. I don't know anything about Giletto. I wonder whether anybody could tell me about images on plates. I don't know. So he had a tricky relationship with his brother. Right, I'm going to skip through that. This is the photo I showed you before, rather nice photo. Where is KP's work on his pedigree? He writes about pedigrees. He has a multi-volume work on other people's pedigrees. He comments on how pedigrees are a work of great labour and a work of real art. He doesn't do his own. Why is that? Where are the women, we might say? Big gap there. Right, I'm just going to show you some pictures there, some of which have never been shown before, obtained from Karl Pearson's granddaughter. And here I go into my 5,000 people. So these are the sorts of things that I have got. I've got sort of fan charts and this chart and that chart about the family. It's become a bit of a time taker. Links with Frederick Mockett, who is the illegitimate son. The final ramble. Some of you might know about A.S. Byatt's book on the biographer's tale, which is a fictional biography of a fictional biographer. But in that, Linnaeus, Galton and Pearson actually appear as they have walk-on parts, as it were. And I'm surprised nobody's referred to A.S. Byatt, actually, because it is a conflict about biography, after all. So I just want to end with 3 methodological questions that I started off with. Essentially, how does family fit into mathematical biography? And when there are gaps, when people show a lack of interest in something, how can we make inferences from that? Thank you.
Okay, we have a few minutes for questions. Loads of material, that's for sure. Any questions, comments?
Could you read chapter and verse about the Hitler worship, which I've never heard?
Right. I more or less gave the quote when he talked about the interesting experiments that Herr Hitler is carrying out. It was actually when he retired, after his retirement dinner. So one might excuse it either by age or inebriation, but it's definitely there in print.
What year was that roughly?
36.
Well, there was a bit about that in pockets, of course. It's interesting,
yes.
Very interesting that he was one of them.
Yes. Now, I wasn't there when he said it, but it is in print that he said it.
Interesting.
I can send you the precise thing.
Yes, I'd like that. But have you any idea whether this was in the context of eugenics, work which was in academia at that time, particularly in statistics, and vanished from sight after the Nazi Holocaust emerged, or politics?
No, it was very much in the context of eugenics. In fact, prior to that, he'd been eulogising Galton. Yes. And indeed, he may have even been saying that Hitler was, as it were, a follower of Galton's ideas. Yes. But of course, eugenics didn't have such a bad term then. The ideology was very much in terms of improving the stock ideas that have been developed with horses and pigeons and so on, and applying those sorts of ideas to improving the human stock. And the word race was used rather differently. He talked about the English race, which isn't a terminology we use today, but I think that was just the terminology of the times. Okay?
Any more? Yes?
I'm just wondering how you answer your own questions. How you would answer your questions.
What, as to whether it's got any relevance? No, I think probably not. I think I'm probably really wasting my time in terms of the impact upon the intellectual history of this man. I haven't said anything, of course, about his scientific ideas apart from links with eugenics. No, I think it's probably not of any great importance. I mean, because I've got this database, I feel it would be a pity if it were just to not be there for maybe sometime in the future. Somebody else will be interested in the family of Karl Pearson. I'd like it to be available, and I don't know where to put it. This is a comment that has been made about other things far more important than my things. Well, where can we put things so it might be there for researchers in 50 years' time, so that it's available for people to actually, as it were, build on what I've done rather than start from scratch.
Was there any links with H.G. Wells at all? He was interested in some of these themes.
Yes, well, he interacted with Wells in the sort of 1880s. There were various groups in London that, yes, I think I'm right in saying that what's called the Men and Women's Club, and also Olive Schreiner, have I got the name right?
Where was
South
that,
African
Imperial
writer.
College or something, was it? Or
Sorry?
Where was that club at Imperial?
No, I don't. No, I mean it was around people at University College. Whether they met physically at University College, I don't think they did. I think they met at other places, but in that geographical area. I mean, that is described very well in the book by Porter. That period of his life is described very well. And Pearson then was giving talks about feminism, the women question, as it was called, socialism. He by that time spent some time in Germany, so he was a very fluent German, and it's the question why he changed his name to K-A-R-L, because he was born C-A-R-L. I mean, so that period is covered quite well in Porter's book.
Okay. Might have been a link with George Bernard Shaw then, in that case.
Yes. No, in fact, George Bernard Shaw has things in his archives, and there's a postcard from Karl Marx saying, "Come and have tea with me on Thursday afternoon."
Between Karl Marx...
From Karl Marx to Karl Pearson. So saying, "Come and have tea with me on Thursday." But I can't see any other account of this particular cup of tea, which
There's a
might have
good
been.
play here as well.
Oh yes, we're waiting for the musical. Yes.
Very good. Okay, John, thank you very much.